It's very challenging to do kirtan here because every instrument is like 3 seconds later back there. Krishna. Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. Thank you. Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Srimati Vedanta. Swami Nityananda.
Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gaurhari Kachari, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi,
Today's better if I talk like this?
No.
This is the lesser of two evils?
Yeah.
So, So, what we'll do is I will kind of, we'll have to do a summary of what this workshop is about. And I'll give you some history of it. I think every workshop I've ever done has always started with a problem that concerned me. And I decided the best way I could deal with me personally, because I like to teach, the best way to deal with that problem for me would be to create a workshop. And a workshop means something that's 6 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours, 5 days, depending on what we can do. And something really interesting happens after every workshop I do. The devotees say, why didn't we learn this before? And the fact is, we did learn it, but we didn't know we learned it because we didn't focus enough time on it to know that we learned it, because we're learning little things. You read here, you learn something, you read here, you learn something, but not one thing only. So, if you go to a japa retreat or japa workshop, you'll come out and you'll think, everybody should do this. We just had a marriage workshop, you think, oh, everyone who's married should do this. We do the self-care workshop. After we did the self-care workshop, more than any workshop I've ever done, that was the feedback, every devotee should do this. So, when you focus on something, you go very deep into it, you understand it from so many points of view, and you get time to relate to it practically, so you can apply it in your life. So, there were several problems. Some were obvious, which we see, devotees burned out, fried, and toasted. You've seen that? Been there, done that? Yeah. So that's an obvious problem. There's a group of obvious problems: lack of sadhana, too much service, lack of too much service, neglect of family, neglect of health, some combination, right? Or too much work, lack of service, some combination of imbalance. But I became more concerned about what's causing that. Like, why don't we care enough about ourselves to care about ourselves, so to speak? Why, have you ever chanted rounds? I will do a demonstration now of what these rounds look like. I call them blah rounds. You know the word blah? You have that in French? Is there a French equivalent for blah? Yeah. Same word?
Blah, blah.
Yeah, just same with a different accent. Blah, blah, blah.
Say it twice.
Je suis blah.
When you say anything in French, it's longer than English.
For sure.
So this is how you chant blah japa. Hare blah, hare blah, blah blah hare hare, hare blah, blah blah hare hare blah. Ever chanted japa like that? Yes or yes?
Yes.
You don't have to raise your hand because I know we've all chanted that way. So the question that would always come to my mind is, when we chant that way, why don't we do something? Like, why don't we care? Have you ever chanted and you realized this is blah japa and you just finished your rounds with more blah japa? You ever done that? And the whole time you're chanting, this little voice in your mind is saying, you know, this is not good. You should do something, but you're kind of like, I don't care. You know that little voice? You have that little voice in your head? The I don't care, you know you should do this, and that voice says, yeah, but it's too much trouble.
Yeah, too hard.
So, we all have done this with japa. You can apply this to so many things that we should do, that we don't do, and the little voice says something like, do it tomorrow, or it doesn't matter, or I don't care, or worse, this is when it gets really bad, I don't deserve. It's not that I don't care, I'm not even worth taking the time. It's like why should I take the time? I'm not worth it. So, I had a realization while I was teaching the workshop, because I had combined, I taught a lot of japa and mixed it with self-care, because I realized that a lot of bad japa, the problem wasn't so much that the japa is bad, the problem was that we didn't care about chanting well. That was the problem. So I couldn't help devotees chant better if I didn't help them care about their chanting. Because I can tell you how to improve your japa, but if you don't care, what are you going to do? You're going to go, too much trouble. Blah, 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 blah. Chanting blah japa is easier than chanting good japa. At least it seems like, right? Because you don't have to try. So I started realizing that if we are going to improve anything, we have to care more about ourselves. Because if we don't care, where's the impetus going to come to improve? Now, this is really interesting, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur has described inattentive chanting having three elements, and one element is apathy. And of course, apathy means whatever. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Prabhu, you're falling asleep. Whatever. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna. Prabhu, you're not chanting all 16 words of the mantra. Whatever. Prabhu, you didn't get up in the morning. Whatever. You know that? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, apathy is one of the main ingredients of inattention. I just don't care. So instead of saying, I don't care about my japa, I was telling devotees, we should say, I don't care enough about myself to care about my japa. Instead of saying, I don't care about my sadhana, or whatever the blank is, I don't care enough about my marriage, my ashram, my health, my finances, just go down the list, my personal problems that I haven't solved. You know all those things, those resistances you have to dealing with something? All of that. When we say, I don't care about this, start to think, if that this is important, and if that this would, if you improve the this, if that would help you, then start thinking, I don't care enough about myself to care about this. Because in my mind, after teaching this workshop like 10 times, that was my conclusion. That if we have more self-care, then we're going to care about all these other things. So, at the end of the workshop, we do this amazing exercise. And I had no idea the results of this exercise. It was astonishing. We asked everyone after 6 hours or 12 hours or 8, well, I just did one in Slovenia, it was about 18 hours. We asked everyone, how would having more self-care improve your life? And everybody comes up with this long list of problems they have in their life that would be solved. And I didn't expect this the first time we did this, and first time we did it was online, so everyone comes in the chat, and we have like, I don't know how many devotees, probably like 300 devotees or something. So that's a lot, 300 people, you know, and half of them go into the chat, so there's at least 150 people sharing, and there's just these lists of all these things that would improve in their life if they had more self-care. I was like, oh my God, this is more powerful than I thought. So, the next thing that became a concern for me, because I do a lot of counseling, I studied a lot about 20 years ago about human nature, psychology, the mind, self-development, and all of a sudden, Krishna started sending me every devotee in ISKCON who had mental problems. Like as soon as I trained myself, everyone who had a problem was in my inbox. I think you're the right person to help me. And so when you do this kind of work where people are opening up, you start to see the inner world of ISKCON that we don't normally see. The counselors see it, the gurus see it, some of them don't want to see it. But the inner world is a world that's a common world of guilt and of shame and of low self-esteem, conflating humility and low self-esteem, just some kind of self-hatred going on, and also giving up on oneself. And then the worst one, the icing on the cake in the worst ways, I don't feel worthy of being Krishna conscious. I don't feel worthy of Krishna's love. I don't really care. So, I started studying this in Prabhupada's books. And you wouldn't believe how much there is. Nobody thinks this is there in Prabhupada's books. It's there. I wrote an article on self-compassion. Prabhupada doesn't use these words, self-compassion, right? He doesn't use the word self-compassion. But everything he teaches is for our benefit to take and apply to our benefit, isn't it? So at the end of the last workshop, I said to devotees, how many verses in Bhagavad Gita do you think deal with self-care? Everybody said 700. How many in Bhagavatam? 18,000. It's like when you go through the process and you start to understand that everything we're being taught is for our ultimate liberation. It's not just to save others, we have to save ourselves first. So in one sense, everything that Prabhupada taught was for our benefit to take care of ourselves, to become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead. And how many times they tell us we should go back to Godhead? A lot. You should do this and you'll go back to Godhead. So I wrote an article on self-compassion. So I think some leading devotee or someone said Prabhupada never said that. And you know what it's like online when somebody says something, it like leads in for all the others to like start ganging up on you. And they're saying like, you know, this is some kind of new age psychobabble. And I wrote in one of my books, I wrote a chapter, and it was titled something like self-envy, self-hatred, you know, things like that. And the devotee who was editing it was a Prabhupada disciple, and she said, you can't call it this chapter because Prabhupada never said these things. I go, yes, he did. He said it a lot, and I want to explain it because it's kind of covered. You don't notice it until you notice it, then you see it everywhere. You know, like you start noticing the red Honda Civics that you never noticed, and now they're everywhere, something like that. So, as we know, there's this phrase that's used in Bhagavad Gita, he is envious of himself. And Prabhupada uses this word occasionally. If you don't take the Krishna consciousness, then you're envious of yourself. And so that's kind of puzzling, isn't it? Because envy is for something that someone else has that you don't have, so how can you be envious of yourself? Right? Prabhupada even says meat eaters are envious of cows. Like, I'm not really envious of a cow. I don't really want to be a cow. Or envious of an ant. Devotee's not even envious of an ant. Like, why would I be envious of an ant? One day we were on a morning walk and garbage was being collected, and I said to the devotees, are any of you envious of the garbage collectors? Everybody said no. And then some guy drives up in a are any of you envious of him? And some people say, yeah. Some people say, yeah, because I don't have any money and I'd like to have money, so I'm envious of him. So, the word envy is the word in Sanskrit dvesha. Dvesha means hatred, and it also means, Prabhupada translates it also as hatred in other verses, and violence. That's why Prabhupada uses the word, we're envious of the cows, we're envious of the ants. Violence. So when Prabhupada talks about self-envy, he's talking about violence to our actions which are self-violent, actions with which we are hurting ourselves, and actions which demonstrate hatred towards ourselves, which is kind of the same thing. So the concept of self-love came to me from these statements of Prabhupada, and I wanted to read some of them as kind of an opening for this workshop. If my computer would only... The computer decided... Oh, okay. Oh, let me read you something first. This is so interesting. This is so nice. This idea, what I realized, self-care internally comprises of self-compassion, self-acceptance, and self-love. So any of those words, it's like, well, where is that in Srimad Bhagavatam? There are actually a few places Prabhupada talks about loving yourself, directly using those words. But as I said, indirectly it's there. And self-acceptance. So, Prabhu, if I accept myself, I'll just eat and sleep all day. That's the idea. And so it's not exactly what it means. But let's look at these ideas. And first I want to start with the idea of self-compassion. And this is really funny. Well, funny in an interesting way. I'm going to read to you the mission statement of the devotee care, the devotee care department. This is their mission. We strive to care for the spiritual, emotional, physical, and social well-being of the devotees of ISKCON. We want devotees to be encouraged, inspired, and empowered to be happy and make progress in consciousness, and thus be enthused to expand Prabhupada's mission. So it's just about well-being, right? So I did something fun for all the devotees and people who said, this self-compassion stuff is like, nah, it's not really part of our world. Nice. Yeah, it's New Age. Buddhist. Mahatma's become a Buddhist. So I did a little math. Here's the devotee care the devotee care department statement. We should care for the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being of the devotees so they're happy and inspired, so they'll be inspired to spread Krishna consciousness. And I was like, okay, let's do the math. Raise your hand if you're a devotee. I mean, don't be humble, just like, yeah, everyone raise your hand. Okay, you're a devotee. Okay. Now, since you're a devotee, would it be bad to treat yourself this way? I don't think so. So I made up devotee self-care mission statement, which is the same as the devotee care mission statement, except it's about how we take care of ourselves. You want to hear it? Yeah, I think I had some fun. I strive to care for my spiritual, emotional, physical, and social well-being in order that I be well-situated, inspired, and happy in Krishna consciousness and motivated to expand Srila Prabhupada's mission. It's the same statement, except we do it for ourselves. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we have some statements from Srila Prabhupada that I think you'll find interesting. Some of you know these statements, but now I think in the context, if we just think of the context of self-care, then maybe they might take on a new light, a little more power. So this is a room conversation. First of all, save yourself. Then try to save others. Or both things can go on simultaneously. The same example. If you want to save somebody who's drowning, you must know that I may not be washed away. I have to remain strong. Then I can save him. Srila Prabhupada, February 14th, 1977. So, very simple point. Don't try to save someone who's drowning if you don't know how to swim. So, there's a little mantra we have here. I'm going to say it, and then you can say it. It's a little affirmation. Can we do that?
Yes.
Yep. Are affirmations allowed in Canada? Do we need approval of the GBC? GBC's not here. Okay, we can do it. But it's being recorded and he finds out. He'll like it. All right, so here's the affirmation. I will say it, then you say it. I save myself first.
I save myself first.
Okay, now turn to the person next to you and tell them, I saved myself first.
I save myself first.
I say,
So this is the whole foundation of self-care. And this is not selfish at all. It's selfish in a good way, because you can't save any drowning people if you don't save yourself, right? Another way of saying this is I take care of myself first. So let's say that. I take care of myself first. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, I take care of myself. Now, I have to tell you something about affirmations. They actually work if you say them like you mean them, right? So the idea of an affirmation is, I may not fully imbibe this, but I want to imbibe it, so I have to act like I've accepted this as truth and I've imbibed it now. So I'd like you to say it again, but say it like this is how you are all the time, okay? I save myself first.
I save myself first.
It didn't sound like you mean it. Okay, say it like you mean it. I save myself first.
I save myself first.
Now turn to the person next to you and tell them, like you mean it, I save myself first.
I save myself first.
Say it, say it, say it.
So, have you ever been chanting your rounds? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then a thought comes in your mind. What's that? Does that ever happen?
Always.
All the time. Should I keep chanting, or should I to chant, or what's that? That is the question. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The more you chant, sometimes the more you think of WhatsApp, and then you think, well, I'm already thinking of WhatsApp, I might as well WhatsApp, because what's the point of chanting while I'm thinking of WhatsApp, right? So now, when that happens, if you think, I save myself first, I take care of myself first, you will just drop the WhatsApp and keep chanting, unless there's some emergency. It'll just be very easy. When I have to, and that, you know, I don't really like to read, should I read? No, you'll do it more easily. because you care. It's actually that simple. If you build up your self-care, so many things become easy. Now, do you know that one of the cures for addiction is self-care? Did you know that? If somebody has addiction, one of the antidotes to addiction is self-care. And we know what addiction is. Addiction means you're powerless. If someone learns self-care, they can protect themselves from addictions, or at least temptations. Isn't that amazing? It's that powerful. It can rectify many of our problems if we upgrade our self-care. So, we're going to read some more things that Prabhupada said, because I feel like if there's any doubt in anyone's mind that this is bona fide, you're not going to do it. But if we hear from Prabhupada enough, we'll see, no, this is what he wants. For the next quote. Are you ready? Are you enthusiastic? This is a famous letter. But as devotees of Krishna, being engaged in the practical work of spreading Krishna consciousness, that is already the highest realization. That's all right. That is our real mission, to deliver the world by preaching Krishna's message to others. But even higher realization, the higher realization, guess what it is? Save yourself. Okay, so repeat after me. The highest realization, save myself.
Highest realization, myself.
Turn to the person and tell them.
The highest realization is save myself.
I'm not making this up. Okay. So we're going to talk about two words. I mentioned this word self-envy. Prabhupada also uses the word spiritual suicide, and he also uses the word killer of the soul. Translates Isopanishad with the word killer of the soul, translates Gita, envious of his own self, and self-envy comes up a lot. And spiritual suicide, he also talks about spiritual suicide. So we're going to read these quotes. So this is from Bhagavad Gita 16, who read this, and he had, the question we all have, what does it mean to be envious of yourself? Like what, if you don't take the spiritual life, if you don't take advantage, how is it that you're envious of yourself? And so Prabhupada says, if he's going to become a dog in life, and if he does not take precaution, then is he not envying himself? In other words, is he not committing violence to himself? Is he not acting ultimately out of self-hatred? So when Prabhupada uses the word spiritual suicide or self-envy, he's referring to the position of someone who has the opportunity to go back to Godhead in this life and decides by their actions to live in a way that that's not going to happen. So one time in Los Angeles, some devotees had left the temple and they had told Prabhupada, and he ended up talking about it. I was there. He ended up talking about leaving Krishna consciousness in the class because a few people had left, and it was disturbing the leaders. They were discussing with Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is fortunate. And if after coming to Krishna consciousness you leave, you're the most unfortunate. Like the man who has nothing but had $1 million, he's more unfortunate than the man who has nothing, who never had anything. So you have this opportunity, you give it up, you're most unfortunate. So that's Prabhupada's definition of self-envy. You have an opportunity and you don't take advantage. It goes back to this little voice in our head that says, I don't care, is our biggest enemy. And the voice, the purpose of any course on self-care is to change that voice from I don't care to I do care. Now, we've done a survey. We asked devotees on a list from I hate myself, I don't like myself, I don't care, I sometimes care, I do care, I accept myself, I love myself. Where are you on that? Most devotees were sometimes I care, sometimes I don't. Let's say 70-80% that, and another 10% I don't like myself, and another 10% I love myself, I take care of myself. And most of us are sometimes I care, sometimes I don't. So if this is so interesting. If we come to this point of I care, and all those moments of should I do this, should I do that, they'll be gone. You'll always do the right thing because you care. Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
Always, but that WhatsApp for the job, or do I really want to get up early this morning, or what do I want to regulate this, or go here, or do that, or stop this habit, or eat this at midnight, and all that. When the I care is strong enough, it's very easy just to say, no, I won't do that, or yes, I will do it if it's something I should do. I know that sounds kind of simple, but after teaching this for about 2 years, 10 times, this is what I've seen in the lives of devotees. It just upgrade that I care from not sometimes I don't, sometimes I do, to I always do, and you'll see amazing things happen in your life. Restraint, and it becomes easy. Yeah. We do an exercise, maybe we'll do it later. We do an exercise where we talk about if we had self-love, how would that be different? And so we asked the devotees to fill in the blank. I love myself so much to do blank. We have 108 from the last workshop we did. I think we did a workshop for Chinese, and I think we got 108 out of that. 450 devotees online, got 108. And of those 108, I recorded 38. And now it's time for a word from our sponsor. The recordings of those are on the USB sticks I have with all my music. They're like 8 guided meditations, about 5 on self-care. Well, there's actually 48 guided meditations, but there's about 5 or 6 on self-care. And I recorded all of those. They're beautiful. I love myself too much to allow myself to, and all those things I don't want to do that I'm doing. So it was a realization, if I just love myself a little more, I have more self-compassion, more self-care, I can therefore do what's best for me. And the list was mind-blowing. And the first one on the list, you want to hear the best one? That's the best one. You're going to love this, it's the best one. Everybody loves it. It's fantastic. I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer. Wow. Wow. You want to say that after me? I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer. Turn to the person next to you and tell them.
I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer.
Have you ever done something, and you don't have to raise your hand because I know the answer is yes. Have you ever done something and you knew it wasn't good for you, and you knew there'd be some ramification down the end of the road, and you did it anyway? Yes or yes?
Yes or yes.
C-O-C, we-O-V. How do you say or? Ooh. We. You know? We. C'est vrai? Okay. Je ne parle pas français. I speak more French than Spanish because I studied school, and Spanish is just, I have to people speaking. So devotees were thinking of all those things they do that they wish they hadn't done and they regret, and why did I do that? And you know, the thing you regret having done and you do again. You ever done that one? You know? I will never eat potato chips at midnight again. And then we say never say never. So, but with self-love, when you say that, you can say, I love myself too much to allow myself to do this. You can do that. And I don't want to challenge you, I want to recommend, but I could say challenge. I'd like to challenge you while you're here, because this is too much to not chant. Here it is. I love myself too much not to be here at 5 o'clock. Whatever you want to do, whatever difficult for you, see if that helps you, and start cultivating self-care. Start thinking about caring about yourself. Start thinking about turning that switch from sometimes I care or I don't care all the time. That becomes my new state of being. I care, and you will see it has an amazing effect on your ability to give up things you'd like to give up and do things you like to do. And a lot of what we have to give up is mental. It's just thoughts. It's just attachments, right? So we can give up things. I care about myself too much to be attached to this and that. Are you attached to anything that's not good for you?
Yes.
Why? What's the answer? There really isn't a good answer, right? But I would go back to this answer. I'd say, why? Because I don't care enough about myself. That's why. That's the ultimate answer. That's the answer I would like to offer you for any challenge you have when you ask yourself, I know I do this, why am I not doing it? Just tell yourself, because I don't care enough about myself. Not because I don't care enough about not eating this food, I don't care enough about my job, I don't care enough about being a good spouse. No, I don't care enough about myself to do that. I'll give you an example. This is really beautiful. This came to me after, I'm sometimes a slow learner. I don't even know what I'm teaching sometimes. So this came to me after doing 7 workshops. That sometimes in married life we run into this problem like, I'm doing everything and my spouse isn't doing anything, or I'm doing 51%, she's only doing 49%. And we get into that. You ever get into that? Why am I the one doing and she's 49%? And it can create some kind of tension and just, it's not nice. And I was thinking, if I do whatever I have to do to make the relationship work, that's self-care, I'm in a good relationship. And then I relish and enjoy and benefit from a good relationship. I don't benefit from a bad relationship, do I? I just waste time fighting and miserable. So even if I'm making sacrifices, I make sacrifices to help the relationship, it's actually self-care. Because I benefit from a good relationship. Isn't that beautiful? That can really get you over the hump of, why do I have to do everything? Or, it's not fair or whatever. It doesn't matter. When my spouse is happy, I'm happy. Everything is good. So if I make you happy, it's self-care, because now we're happy together. What do you think? Try it out, see if it works. It works. Another way it works, which is really interesting, is, sometimes you see a devotee. You ever see a devotee and you're like, oh, it's him. And you're like, you can see me. That kind of devotee, right? You know that devotee? You've got one of those devotees in your life? So, when we have that devotee in our life, what's happening is it's making us uncomfortable. It's difficult we're making it, the way we deal with that devotee makes it difficult on ourselves, right? So we end up suffering. Oh, it's so-and-so. He's always this and always that, and always this and always that. I don't want to see him, I don't want to talk to him. Or he's such a liberal, or such a fanatic, conservative. But all of that ultimately causes pain to ourselves. So with more self-care, I think, I would like to see what's nice about the devotee, so when I see him, I don't have to run away from him, right? I can say, oh, great. What can I see about him that I can appreciate, because that makes it easier for me. So it causes me to appreciate him just for my own well-being. What do you think of that? You can try applying that. It's very interesting. Now, there's another thing, which I find extremely interesting. Some devotees tell me, maybe this is you also, that I cannot forgive so-and-so because of what so-and-so did. It was too bad to forgive. There's no place in the brain to forgive them. It was so bad, like so inhumane, so unconscionable, whatever, I can never forgive them. But who suffers for that? You do, right? So a self-caring person would not put themselves, by their thinking, by their emotional experience with another person, in a state which causes them to suffer. They would forgive because they know it's the best thing to do for them, because they care about themselves. Does that make sense? Now, if that's enough, just go on Google and learn about how your emotional experience affects your health. Enough to forgive anybody, even if they killed your mother. Yeah, it's so bad on our health. Negative emotional experience. So if you care about your health and you have all these negative relationships, self-care would be, I have to clean up these relationships, so I have to be positive because I'll suffer. Do you know, this is amazing, that if you have a good marriage, your immune system will be stronger than someone in a bad marriage. If you have a good marriage, you will live 7 to 14 years longer than if you're in a bad marriage. Did you know that? One marriage counselor said, if you spend 20 minutes a day trying to improve your relationship, it will give you better health than 20 minutes a day in the gym.
Wow.
That's crazy. Because of the power of the negative, the positive emotions, positive endorphins and all that, oxytocin and whatever else, and the negative emotions from negative experience and how it affects us. So just knowing that, just on the physical level, that wouldn't you think if I care about myself, I would care about my relationship? I would care about cleaning up my relationships, and if I did something so bad, at least I could neutralize it. All right, I don't love him, and bless his heart, he is what he is, but I don't want to torment myself. And so you can go down the list and see the ways we torment ourselves. Some of us like to be tormented. It's kind of our nature. And we find things that will torment us. And we get all tormented about it. And we start our torment. Right? We wake up in the morning and go, what bad thing's happening to ISKCON today? I gotta share this with everybody. It's like, so a self-caring person wouldn't do that. They would be upset about what's going on. They would be able to deal with it in a way that's not, I'm going to think job. How difficult that is to a problem that's really bothering you. It's very difficult. But a self-caring person is just, I can't do this to myself. This is destroying me. Personally, I feel so unqualified. I hope to love Krishna, and my only hope is that I can chant the holy name purely. Other than that, I don't feel like I have any hope. So when I'm doing japa, I'm thinking, this is so important, I can't let anything disturb that japa, because if it does, I got no hope. This is my only hope. And if I don't do this right, then I'm just, another Kali Yuga-ite back in the cycle. So, I want to love Krishna. I care enough about myself to want to perfect myself over into my japa, because that's the thing that's going to give it to me. So if I care about you back to God, does that make sense? Yeah. And there's just, you can start imagining that would be easier if you cared more. Like sometimes I think Gaur asked me, what about, like, how do you deal with a person who's criticizing you? Something like that. Some question like that you'd ask me, or, a person who's like turning, or maybe you didn't ask, but other people ask, like, somebody's criticizing you, making up stories. This has happened to me several times. If somebody criticizes you and you actually did the wrong thing, be humble and accept the criticism and say, I deserve it. But when they make up stories that are like total fiction, that's difficult. So how do you deal with it? And my realization is, if you care about yourself, you're not going to try to get involved in fighting, unless you're going to lose all your money because of it, or there's some practical reason. But there's no practical reason. You're not going to get involved because there's no point other than yourself and just agitating that person when this fight goes on. So oftentimes you'll see many when they're criticized, they never say anything. They don't do it because it's going to be such a disturbance and so upsetting. They'll think, this is going to disturb my sadhana, my Krishna consciousness, even though the ego says, get back at them, say something bad about them, tell the world they're lying. And sometimes we have to tell the world we're lying, because we may have a position and people lose faith in our position. We may have to clear that up. But if that's not necessary, then the devotee who is protecting himself don't say anything, won't deal with it. I don't want to go there, I don't want to deal with it. So that's another way self can protect us. Okay, let's read something else Prabhupada says. So you voluntarily accept this cycle of birth, and you don't accept it, then who can help you? If you have decided to cut your own throat, how can I help you? You'll do it. Whenever you get opportunity, you'll cut your throat. How much I can give you protection? So the same point. But I think, we can also turn this around and say, if I don't help myself, say, oh, my guru's going to help me. Yes and no. Because Prabhupada's saying here to his disciples, I can't help you. I can give you instruction, but I can't help you. Follow it. So, sometimes devotees say, be merciful to me, and my response is, be merciful to yourself. You already have a lot of mercy. You wrote 80 volumes of mercy. How much more do you want? Be merciful to me. When was the last time you read in one of those 80 volumes? Can't remember, Prabhu. All right. So you're asking for mercy. You have so much mercy, take it. That's what self-caring person does. They take advantage of the mercy. Like we're here, so much association, so many classes. Take advantage, give yourself mercy. Take advantage of the Sangha, all the programs. A lot of us don't live near temples. Here's your chance to have a whole morning program. Take advantage. If you don't take advantage, who's going to give you the mercy? This is going to fly over your head, right? Srila Prabhupada was asked, what is the devotee's greatest enemy? And Prabhupada replied, quote, he himself. He's a rascal. He's his greatest enemy. So just get out of them, and you become your friend. Nobody is enemy. You are yourself your enemy. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, I am myself, my only enemy.
Only enemy.
There is no other enemy. There's a movie